Las cosas no son como se están diciendo. Aquí se ha manipulado información, se ha mentido deliberadamente y es eso lo que venimos a aclarar hoy día, de que esto no es como se ha dicho ni es como se ha mostrado.
¿Usted sigue manteniendo su inocencia, Martín?
Completamente. Yo sigo manteniendo que soy inocente.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing super well. Thank you all so much for being here and for taking the time to listen to today's video. Today, we're actually going to be heading over to Chile to talk about what happened to Antonia Barra. Antonia's case highlights how victims of sexual assault are compelled to remain silent due to an overwhelming fear of retribution and shame. If a victim does choose to come forward, oftentimes they are failed by the judicial system, by the public, and even by those close to them. This was a very difficult case to read and write about. You guys are going to feel so angry throughout the video because the people involved in this case are actually they are on a different level of rudeness, on evilness, and honestly, just learning about these people makes you question humanity. Yeah, there are a handful of times throughout the research where I was asking myself, what the heck is wrong with people? Now, April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, so it's very important to spread awareness on this very serious topic. I will link a couple of resources down below for hotlines you can contact if you or someone you know is a victim of SA, and I will also be making a donation to RAIN on behalf of La Familia. The Familia has made it possible for us to donate to these amazing organizations and continue to support their mission. Our sponsors also really help with this, so I do just want to take a quick moment to thank today's sponsor. Thank you to Lumi for sponsoring today's video and supporting this channel. Lumi deodorant is a whole body aluminum-free deodorant for pits, privates, and beyond. It was created by Dr. Shannon Klingman, a gynecologist who realized the importance of empowering women to discreetly address odor concerns at home so they can confidently live their best lives. So, what makes Lumi different? Well, Lumi stops odor before it starts by paralyzing odor-causing bacteria on the skin. It's proven to provide 72-hour odor control, even on sensitive skin. It's also aluminum-free, baking soda-free, paraben-free, and clinically proven to be safe for your skin. That's honestly the most important part for me. I have very sensitive skin, so this has been amazing. Lumi is also a whole-body deodorant, so it's for more than just your armpits. You can choose from 8 different scents that are all unique. They have minted cucumber, soft powder, clean tangerine, toasted coconut, lavender sage, peony rose, fresh alpine, and unscented. My personal favorite is the toasted coconut. I love anything coconut, especially for the summertime. I just feel like coconut just smells so good. I also really enjoy the lavender scent. I feel like it just smells very fresh and very clean. I'm actually going to Disney soon, so I will definitely be bringing my Lumi deodorant with me because it's going to be so hot that day, and just feeling gross and not fresh at Disney is the worst. I love that it doesn't stain my clothes. That's an issue that I have with a lot of other deodorants, and another plus is that Lumi is cruelty-free and vegan. Now is a perfect time to try out Lumi. Their starter pack bundle is great for new customers, and it comes with a full-size stick deodorant, a cream deodorant tube, 2 free products like the wipes or mini body wash, and also has free US shipping. Along with that, just for my followers, Lumi is offering an extra $5 off when you order at lumideodorant.com and enter the code Jackie Flores at checkout. That's a deal of over 40% off, so definitely check it out by clicking the link in the description box down below. Once again, thank you to Lumi for supporting the channel, and now let's jump right into the video. Antonia Barra was born on December 3rd, 1998 in Temuco, Chile to her parents Marcela Barra and Alejandro Barra. She had 4 siblings in total, 3 sisters and 1 brother, and they were a very close-knit, loving, and hardworking family. Antonia had a very strong bond with her siblings, and her parents worked incredibly hard to give their children a very good life, one that allowed them to follow their dreams. Growing up, Antonia was very studious and responsible, and is described as just being very outgoing, social, and very empathetic to others. She would always give her friends rides wherever they needed one. She always came home on time, and her parents really had nothing to worry about her. They really had no issues of her going through a teenage phase, or her rebelling, or her just not behaving. Her parents think that she was genuinely a great child, almost perfect. Antonia was a commercial engineering student at the Universidad Mayor de Temuco and was even on the honor roll, which was something that her parents were incredibly proud of. She just always had very good grades, and she took her studies very seriously. She was also saving up so she could hopefully come to the United States one day and learn English so that she could get a better job in the future. She had all the support from her family to follow her dreams, and she was working very hard to achieve them. As for her love life, Antonia had just gotten out of a 2-year relationship with 24-year-old Rodrigo Canario. Now, she broke up with him in August of 2019 because he was quite toxic, and she just realized that this relationship was not going well. However, despite breaking up with him, they were still in that like limbo phase of, are we gonna get back together or not? And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. You know, sometimes you break up with someone, but those romantic feelings can still linger. So that just makes you question, you know, whether or not you should give the relationship a second chance. That's pretty much where Antonia was. You know, she was broken up with Rodrigo, but like also kind of not broken up with him. And, you know, they were in that stage of like deciding what to do about the relationship. So even though she was kind of dealing with a lot in this relationship, everything else in her life seemed to be going well. On Sunday, October 13th, 2019, at around 7 p.m., a couple of Antonia's family members returned from a weekend trip outside the city. Everyone but Antonia left on this mini trip, so she stayed home alone all weekend. Of course, before leaving, the family was like, hey, we don't want you to be lonely and like feel sad that you're left alone. Why don't you invite a friend to come stay with you this weekend? But apparently Antonia said no, that she preferred to stay by herself. Everyone started packing up their bags. Her mom and her dad drove in different cars since they all didn't fit in one car. So everyone left for the mini vacation and then came back on October 13th. Now, her mom, Marcela, arrived first with her other 15-year-old daughter, Ignacia, with their grandma, Raquel, and with the family's dog. When they pulled up to the driveway, they noticed that Antonia's car was parked outside. Marcela saw this and was like, perfect, that means that Antonia's home, she's not with her friends, so that means she can come outside to help us bring in all our luggage. So she gets down, she rings the doorbell so that Antonia can come out to help them with the luggage, but Antonia never came to the door. Her mom didn't think anything other than Antonia maybe being asleep and not hearing the doorbell, so they decided to just go inside the house anyways, and Marcela shouts Antonia's name, but again, no answer. So the sister Ignacia decides to just go upstairs to check in on Antonia, and that's when all of a sudden Marcela hears Ignacia scream, "Mama, mama, Antonia killed herself." Marcela runs upstairs and she sees Antonia in her PJs, hanging unresponsive with a pink-hearted bedsheet wrapped around her neck. Her mom, of course, got hysterical and she just began shouting and crying and was like, we need to get her down immediately, and she called the neighbors for help to get Antonia down from the high ceiling beam. The neighbors and everyone gets there and they cut the sheet and then they laid her on the ground and tried to get her to react. When the ambulance finally arrived shortly after and took her vitals, they said that there was nothing that they could do to save her and that it was too late. Antonia was gone. She took her own life. Everything was just so sudden and Marcela was just so confused and in shock. I mean, the family just had a wonderful weekend together, you know, outside of the city, spending time with each other. And as soon as they get back, they just find their daughter had taken her own life. It was just absolutely shocking and just so heartbreaking. Antonia's body was taken and Marcela said that seeing her daughter being taken away in a bag was absolutely horrific. She was just crying uncontrollably. I just can't even imagine how traumatic experiencing that is, and my heart just feels so heavy thinking of Antonia and what led her to do this. After her body was taken away, the rest of the family found out about what happened and they all gathered at the home just absolutely heartbroken and in utter disbelief. As for Antonia's father, Alejandro, he was still driving home after this mini getaway because again they had to take 2 separate cars. So he was still driving when he suddenly got the call that his daughter was dead, and he said that as soon as he heard that phone call, it was as if the world went silent and his eardrums just popped. He said that instead of just like pushing the pedal and rushing home to see what had happened, his body just couldn't react and he actually drove home very slowly and his mind was just filled with confusion and disbelief. To all of the family, you know, there was just no signs that Antonia was struggling to the point of taking her own life away. Alejandro needed an explanation. Why did his little girl do this? How did he not know his daughter was fighting for her life? What battle was Antonia fighting? He needed answers, so he began looking through Antonia's cell phone, and what he found made his stomach drop. He discovered that his daughter was raped 3 weeks earlier. He saw messages between Antonia and her ex, Rodrigo, where he was basically confronting Antonia about an apparent infidelity, and Antonia tried explaining to him that that's not what happened, that she didn't cheat on him, but that she was raped. Antonia's family was shocked when they read these messages. They had no idea that this had happened to their beautiful young daughter. So the family immediately began reaching out to all of her friends to try to further piece this together and figure out who did this to her, why, when, and honestly just figure out what had happened. Antonia was again just full of life. She was always talking about the future and excited about the plans that she had, so everyone just wanted to get to the bottom of this. Finally, after asking around and fighting for answers, one of Antonia's close friends named Consuelo told the family everything. Now, Consuelo was Antonia's very close friend for the last 3 years, and they were basically glued at the hip. They spent 6 out of the 7 days of the week together. They would have a handful of sleepovers. They were always hanging out and were always together. Consuelo reached out to the family and told them that everything had happened about a month earlier on September 17th, 2019. Now, I'm about to mention a ton of names and a lot of people. There's just so many people involved in this case, so just stay with me. I know it's going to be a lot. Okay, so back to September 17th, 2019. This is when Antonia and Consuelo went to a nearby city, which was around 2 hours away, called Pucón, to celebrate a national holiday. On this holiday, everyone takes a few days off to celebrate and, go on road trips or like mini vacations, things like that. Consuelo's family actually had a cabin in Pucón, so they planned to spend their days off at this cabin together and just have a good time, drink, be with their friends. Antonia, Consuelo, and Consuelo's boyfriend, Tomás, and their 2 friends, Benjamin and Ismael, all decided to take this trip to Pucón. Antonia was the one driving, and when they arrived at Consuelo's cabin, Benjamin and Ismael left to stay at another cabin, but they all met up later that night when they all decided to go to a club. According to Consuelo, they each drank a bottle of champagne while getting ready, which was kind of like their pre-game routine while choosing their outfits, doing their makeup and listening to music. They then left to the club where they met with their friends and with some other classmates, and Consuelo says that everyone was having a good time. The group was dancing and drinking, partying, and just enjoying this vacation with their friends and with their classmates. Since so many of their friends were there, Antonia and Consuelo separated for some time to mingle with some of their other friends. Antonia ended up meeting with a classmate who's also named Benjamin, but his last name is Morales, so he's different from the other Benjamin that she came on the trip with. So I'll just refer to this Benjamin as Morales so that we don't get them confused. So Antonia and Morales danced, they talked, and they were kind of like touchy throughout the night, by hugging each other and kissing each other a few times. After this, Antonia went with some other friends to mingle, and then Morales just kind of went his own way as well. Then at around 6:30, 6:45 in the morning, Consuelo and her boyfriend Tomás were finally ready to go back to the cabin and just kind of like end the night there. But apparently Antonia was not ready to go home. She was now actually hanging out with one of their other friends named Emilio. Now, her and Emilio met not too long ago, and they had some conversations on Instagram, but were talking for the first time in person at this nightclub, like on a more deeper level. So it seems like they were more like IG friends, and now they were all finally meeting up. So Consuelo tells Antonia like, hey, let's go, it's getting late. But Antonia said that she wanted to stay a little bit longer, and Consuelo was like, no way, I'm not going to leave you here alone. Like, that's not okay. But apparently Antonia was very insistent on this, and Consuelo ended up giving in because Emilio and Consuelo were very good friends. And he was like, don't worry about Antonia, like I'll take her home myself, so just don't worry about it. And since Consuelo knew Emilio, she felt comfortable and safe enough leaving her friend in his care. Regardless of how much she trusted Emilio, she still told Antonia like, hey, call me, keep in touch, and just let me know if you need me to come get you, or let me know when you're on your way so I can be outside of the cabin ready to open the door for you. So she tells Antonia all of that, and then she and her boyfriend Tomás leave, and Antonia stays behind with Emilio. Antonia and Emilio just keep dancing, talking, and just enjoying the night. According to Emilio, Antonia did end up getting an Instagram message from 28-year-old Martín Pradenas, who was also at that nightclub. Now, I know it's kind of crazy that all these people were at this nightclub that were like mutual friends and like classmates and people from the town, but again, just remember that this is a big national holiday, so most people from Antonia's town go to this, new town to celebrate, and that's why she ran into so many of like her mutual friends and just like so many people. So Martín and Antonia only knew each other from Instagram because they shared mutual friends, so they've never actually met in person. They had only had a few conversations through Instagram. They would give each other likes and comment on the photos, respond to their stories, but that was pretty much it. Again, they did not know each other in person. Now, let's talk a little bit about who Martín is. 28-year-old Martín Pradenas was born to his parents Paola and Ivan, and he had 2 siblings, 1 brother and 1 sister. When Martín was in his early 20s, he actually had a daughter with a girl who we will call Sam, who he ended up separating from, but still remained in the child's life, who was 7 years old at the time. So Martin had a 7-year-old baby, and the mother of his daughter, Sam, belonged to a very powerful and affluent family in Chile, which is an important detail that we will discuss later on. So just remember that. Besides that, I really wasn't able to find much about Martin's personal life other than that. Just like Antonia, Martin also went to Pucón with his friends and stayed actually very close to the cabin that she was staying at with Consuelo, which was only about a 3 to 5 minute walk away. So again, Antonia didn't really know him, but Martin knew who she was right away because as soon as Antonia walked inside the club, Martin immediately recognized her from Instagram. So he kind of just like sat back and was being very creepy and watching Antonia from a corner in the club, and then he messaged her on Instagram saying things such as, "Why are you with that dumb guy? I'm back here, come over here." Now Antonia sees these messages and she's just like, what the heck, like this creepy guy that I know from Instagram is just watching me in the corner and is telling me like to come talk to him. And she shows Emilio these text messages and Emilio was like, yeah, that's really weird, just like don't respond to him. And apparently that's what Antonia did. She just ignored the messages and continued on hanging out with Emilio. However, according to Emilio, he took a break to go to the bathroom, and then when he came back to where he was standing with Antonia, he realized that Antonia was gone. She had gone off to go meet with Martin and she was talking to him and Martin was holding her by the arm. Emilio did notice that Antonia suddenly wasn't all in her senses. You know, she was kind of like leaning on Martin. He said that her eyes were rolled back, showing the white part of her eyes. Initially, Emilio didn't think too much about this because literally just a few minutes ago, she was completely fine. Yes, she had been drinking throughout the night, but she was still able to talk and have a conversation and stand on her own. So he was kind of just like, well, yeah, I mean, a few minutes ago she was normal. Maybe now she's just tired and that's why she's leaning on him. He did think it was a little bit weird that Antonia kind of just like left him to go speak with Martin after she was complaining about his messages. But at the same time, he also thought that everything was just fine and that in the end, they were all going to go to an after party together. So the night continues, and then at around 7:25 in the morning, Emilio kind of like second guesses what he saw, and he starts to get really worried because he's like, wait, this guy was like creeping and staring at Antonia in the corner of the room. He was messaging her these crazy things, and now Antonia's talking to him and she kind of seems out of it, like something is off. On top of that, he also noticed that Antonia was gone. Like somehow she had disappeared from the club and he just started to get really worried. So he messaged Consuelo on Instagram and said, hey, is Antonia with you? And Consuelo was like, no, she's not. And that's when Emilio asked for Antonia's phone number so that he could try to call her just to make sure that everything was okay. Consuelo also tried calling Antonia right away as well, but didn't hear back from her until around 8:56 in the morning when she suddenly got a message from Antonia. Antonia sent her location and a message asking if she could go pick her up. When Consuelo checked the location, she saw that it was a very short walking distance from theirs. It was like a 5-10 minute walk where Antonia was. So she just told Antonia like, no, I won't go get you, but like you walk here and I'll be there ready to open the door for you. However, Antonia insisted on Consuelo going to pick her up. And this is when Consuelo, who was kind of tipsy and like lying in bed, just like perked up and realized that something was off. The next message that she got from her friend Antonia said, I'm raped. And then she also sent a voice message where she was crying, begging her to go pick her up. Consuelo's eyes just immediately widened as soon as she saw the message and heard the voice note, and her heart just like skipped a beat when she realized that this was a very scary situation, that her friend was crying, that she was saying she was raped, and she was unable to speak clearly. Consuelo was freaking out, so she immediately rushes to the location with her boyfriend Tomas, and as soon as they arrive, they find Antonia and they found her in complete shock, basically running, wearing one of Martin's sweaters, bawling her eyes out. Consuelo tells Antonia like, hey, come here, stay with Tomas, like he'll take care of you and he'll calm you down, because she wanted to go inside the cabin to figure out what happened to her friend. As soon as she walked in the cabin and entered one of the first rooms, she found Martin. Now, she said that the house was really dark and the curtains were all closed, and that when she entered the room, she was met with blank stares of people that she didn't know, and so she started to feel nervous, so she tried to quickly exit the room, but then she was stopped by Martin Martin, who came up from behind her, undressed, holding a pillow covering his private areas. Consuelo just immediately begins yelling at Martin and asks for an explanation of what happened and what he did to make her friend Antonia feel this way, but Martin just didn't say anything, and that's when Consuelo just started shouting, "Look what you did," and just left the room. Now, she wanted to further confront Martin about what Antonia had said, about how she claimed to have been raped, but in that moment to Consuelo, what mattered more was being there for her friend, so she just went back outside with Antonia and Tomas. Consuelo says that Antonia was crying so hard and just begging her to go home so that she could take a shower, that she kept just tugging at her skin and touching herself and saying that she felt filthy. On the walk back home, there was a cop car, and Consuelo asked if she wanted her to report what had happened right then and there, but Antonia said absolutely not, that she only wanted to go home to shower. That's really all Antonia could think of in that moment. She also didn't have the clothes that she was wearing at the club. She was literally only wearing Martin's sweater with nothing else underneath. So they start walking back to the cabin, and they end up actually throwing the sweater away. And then Consuelo helped Antonia shower and change into her PJs. She gave her a warm cup of tea and then laid her down onto the bed. Antonia was still crying at this point and was unable to articulate words, and when Consuelo asked if they should report it to the police, Antonia said no once again, because then her parents would find out what happened to her, and then all of her friends would find out, and the entire city would find out, and she was just very ashamed and grossed out and just embarrassed by what had happened. She said that she felt guilty for what happened to her because she was drunk, so she felt like in a way that it was her fault. She also tried justifying not going to the police because she was worried about what Martin's daughter would think. Martin's daughter was 7 years old, so she could possibly see the news and see that her dad is being accused of rape, and she was really worried about what the daughter would think. Now, reporting this type of abuse and this type of incident is incredibly difficult. There's a lot of people that have shamed Antonia and judge her for this. They're like, oh my god, why wouldn't she report it if the police were literally right there? But again, you don't know how you will react in this type of situation until you are in the situation. So we cannot judge Antonia for the decisions and for, the things that she was thinking after just being assaulted. So Consuelo just comforted Antonia throughout the night, and then they eventually fell asleep. The next day, on September 18th, when they woke up, Antonia told Consuelo what actually happened. She said she doesn't really remember most of the night after her and Tomas left her with Emilio. She didn't know how Martin managed to get her out of the club. She briefly remembers walking down a street and then arriving at a cabin that she didn't recognize. Now, once inside the cabin, she said that Martin shoved her down on the bed and then began to undress her. And she tried telling him no, but that it felt like she couldn't control her body, that she just felt weak. Martin then began to essay her, and she doesn't know for how long he did this to her, but that the next thing she knew, she woke up with Martin on top of her, and that's when it all hit her, and that's when she called for help. Now, before calling Consuelo, however, Antonia had called one of their other friends and asked him to come pick her up, not telling him that anything that had happened yet, but the friend said that he was pretty drunk, and after seeing the location she sent, he thought it was kind of pointless to go pick her up and take her only a few houses down from where she was staying anyway, so the friend said no, and then that's when Antonia decided to call Consuelo, and then we know what happened next. After telling Consuelo what happened that night, Antonia made it clear that she didn't want anyone to know and that she didn't want to keep talking about this. After telling her friends all of this, Antonia did get a message from Martin on Instagram. Now, he messaged her with the audacity to ask for his sweater back. Yeah, after literally essaying someone and causing all of this trauma and just doing all of this terrible stuff, he literally messages the victim and asks for his sweater back. Now, to this, Antonia told him that he took advantage of her, that he R-worded her, and then she blocked him. Later that same day, all of the friends ordered sushi, and they just kind of laid in bed together on their phones and talked about what happened. Antonia said that she didn't want to ruin Consuelo's vacation and encouraged her and Tomas to go out, and said that she would be fine alone. They literally had already paid for this vacation. Again, they're on vacation, so they paid for the cabin, they paid for a promotion at a club for that night, so Antonia just didn't want them to lose their money, and she told them, guys, go out, have fun, go live your life, I will be fine. I don't want what happened to me to ruin this vacation. Now, Consuelo insisted that she just can't leave her friend alone because something so traumatic just happened to her, and Antonia was saying that she already felt very guilty for what happened to her and that she doesn't want to feel even more guilty about ruining their vacation. She eventually convinces Consuelo and she just stays at the cabin all by herself while Consuelo and Tomás go out for some drink. Now, Antonia didn't really want to stay alone, but she also didn't want to go out, so she actually called two of her other friends, Andres and Felipe, and invited them over to the cabin to keep her company. When they got to the cabin, she also told them about what happened, and they comforted her through the entire night. As the night continued, Consuelo was messaging Antonia, constantly making sure that she was okay and telling her that if she wants to, she will immediately come home. But Antonia told her that she was fine. After this night, the mini vacation that they had planned was pretty cut short, and Antonia just really wanted to go back home and be with her family. So everyone packed up their things and returned to Temuco on September 19th. Antonia just really wanted to go on about her normal life, and she had already blocked Martin on social media, and she just really wanted to forget about everything. She did end up telling Emilio what happened as well, because he was literally messaging her being like, hey, where did you go that night? Because remember, Antonio and Emilio were literally at the club together, and then when he went to the bathroom, he realized that Antonia was now with Martin. So he was just messaging her to make sure that everything was okay, and also just wanted some answers as to what had happened, and she did end up telling him the truth about the assault. So now a couple of people knew about this, the friends from the cabin, Emilio, but these were all people that Antonia trusted and felt comfortable enough to reveal this, traumatic thing to. So eventually Antonia gets back home, she's reunited with her family, and she tells them that the trip was very fun and that everything went well. Now, hearing that Antonia just tried to forget this horrible thing that happened to her and just kind of hid it from her family. Sorry guys, my light died, so if you notice a difference, that's why. Okay, going back to the case, it's just really, really sad how Antonia felt like she had to hide this from her family, and how she really just wanted to forget about everything that happened to her and was just putting up a front and just trying to be strong and putting a smile on her face just so her family wouldn't suspect anything. It's really, really sad, and again, all of this just kind of emphasizes how difficult it is for victims to speak out and for them to live with this and share share what happened to them with their close family and friends. And of course, no one has to share anything, but it's also really hard to keep everything bottled up inside and to yourself. Antonia did her best to go on about her life. She continued with her schoolwork and with her usual activities, just trying not to let what happened affect her. According to Consuelo, they didn't touch on that topic again because Antonia begged for it to be a secret. So Consuelo didn't want to push her on this very delicate incident, so she didn't insist on Antonia reporting it to the police and just respected her wishes of not bringing it up again. Some of Consuelo's classmates say that she was fine and was acting as usual, but others say that she looked very sad, that she looked very tired, and that she was even failing her exams and not turning in her homework, which was a really big shock to them since Antonia was a very good student and again was on the honor roll. Antonia was just doing her best to keep pushing forward, but on October 12th, she got a phone call from her ex-boyfriend Rodrigo, and this phone call changed everything. Rodrigo heard a rumor going around that Antonia was unfaithful to him, and that made him absolutely furious. His girl best friend, Carla, which this girl, I cannot deal with her, but Carla was the one who told him about this supposed infidelity. So, how did Carla know about this? Well, Carla's boyfriend Miguel was friends with Martin, and Martin had told him that he had with Antonia in Pucón, and then Miguel told Carla, and then Carla told Rodrigo. So Rodrigo was very mad about this, and he confronted Antonia in a very aggressive tone, and he just kind of went off on her. Antonia just couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her boyfriend, I know they were kind of like on and off at this point, but basically her boyfriend was telling her, hey, you cheated on me, when in reality, that's not what happened. Antonia just couldn't hold it in anymore, so Antonia decided to tell Rodrigo the truth. She said that she didn't cheat, that she was raped. She told Rodrigo that she wanted to disappear, that she felt very dirty and ashamed, but Rodrigo didn't believe a word that she said. Yeah, this guy did not believe his girlfriend when his girlfriend was saying that she was assaulted. He instead began calling her horrible slurs. He began insulting her, saying that she was a pig, and he actually started to record this conversation without Antonia's permission. So the way that he recorded the conversation is that he had his WhatsApp web open on his laptop, and he clicked the voice message button in the chats that he had open with Carla so that he could record what she was saying. Again, just such a weird, sneaky thing to do. Like, who does something like that? I feel like maybe if he wanted to catch her in a lie at the beginning because he did think she was cheating, I guess that makes sense why he was maybe recording the call as like proof if she admitted to cheating. But as soon as she revealed that she was assaulted and that she didn't cheat, he should have immediately closed that laptop and taken what Antonia was telling him seriously. But no, he decided to just continue recording and then just insulted her. He said that he just couldn't believe that she cheated on him on his birthday, which was on September 18th, the day of the incident, and Antonia just kept insisting that that's not what happened, and she was crying, trying to explain to him that she was violated and R-worded, and was begging for Rodrigo to listen to what she was telling him. He honestly just did not care, and he ended up sending that audio message to Carla and asked her to hear it so that they can discuss what they thought about Antonia's version of things and whether or not they should believe her. It's disgusting. Again, this girl Carla, like, what a freaking weirdo. Like, it's one thing for, I guess, a man to not believe you, but Carla's a girl. Like, she should be a girl's girl and believe when a woman is saying that she was raped. Now, after this phone call with Rodrigo, Antonia was so confused as to how Rodrigo found out about this because he didn't tell her that Carla was the one that told him. He was just like, hey, I heard that you cheated on me. So Antonia ends up calling Consuelo and is like, hey, did you tell someone about what happened? Because Rodrigo just called me and harassed me and accused me of cheating on him with Martin. Consuelo was like, of course not. I didn't tell anybody. Later that night at around 10:27 p.m., Rodrigo went to Carla's workplace and there they called Antonia and spoke to her through his car's Bluetooth. He asked her why she didn't report the R wording if it was true and how come she didn't tell her parents if this was true. And again, he was just being very nasty towards her and just unempathetic and just rude. Carla was getting so frustrated with this phone call and she was just like, just hang up on Antonia and just like don't even fight with her anymore or don't listen to her. So Rodrigo just hangs up the phone even though again Antonia was trying to explain to him that she was R-worded and that she did not cheat on him. Rodrigo ends up leaving Carla's work and he goes straight to his house, and then when he arrives, Antonia pulls up. They begin arguing and she tells him that now not only is she being harassed by him, but now she's being harassed by Martin because he somehow got a hold of the recorded conversation and was now angry that she was telling people what happened that night. She told Rodrigo that at around 10:07 p.m., Martin called her to confront her and asked why she was spreading false information. He said that he never R-worded her, that she was just saying all of this to get everyone to turn against him, and said that she was lying. He even threatened her on this phone call. So Antonia tells Rodrigo all of this, and Rodrigo's like, well, I have no idea how the audio got to Martin because I only sent it to Carla. Now, since she felt like she wasn't getting a straight answer, Antonia decided to get in the car and just leave. And she said that she didn't want to talk to him anymore, and that was the last time that Rodrigo saw her. So you may be wondering, well, how did Martin find out about this recorded conversation if Rodrigo is saying that he only sent it to Carla? Well, this freaking snake Carla sent the voice message to her boyfriend and then he sent the voice message to Martin because once again, her boyfriend and Martin were friends. It's literally disgusting that this girl Carla would share such a sensitive conversation that literally had nothing to do with her. Like, even if Antonia cheated, why do you care so much? Like, move on with your life. Like, this girl just makes me so angry. So that day is chaotic. Like, just think about everything that Antonia has gone through at this moment. I mean, she was, first of all, R-worded and assaulted in such a terrible way by this random guy. Then she comes back and her boyfriend starts harassing her, saying that she cheated and that he doesn't believe her and that she's a pig and all of this stuff. Then she starts not only getting harassed by her boyfriend, but now by her assaulter again, who is calling her and saying that she's a liar and that he didn't do anything to her. It's absolutely insane and just so horrific what she went through in the days leading up to her death. So now let's move on to the next day, which is Sunday, October 13th at around 11:15 a.m. Again, October 13th is the day that Antonia took her life. That morning, she actually called Rodrigo's mom, Luisa, and said that she told her son that she was R-worded, but that her son didn't believe her and that Martin called her last night very angrily and that she was really scared. Luisa tells her that she needs to report this to the police and that she would talk to her parents on Monday or on Tuesday to get her some help. Then, later that same day, Antonia sent a goodbye message to Rodrigo. She told him that this wasn't his fault and asked him to tell her family that she loved them. As we know, later that day at 7 p.m., Antonia's family came home from their weekend vacation, and unfortunately, that is when they found Antonia in her room and discovered that she had taken her own life. I know, it's a lot. Like, everything that happened is just absolutely horrific, and it just breaks my heart that Antonia felt like this was the only option that she had. And it's just also just so sad and disturbing to think about how she was basically pushed to this point, because it felt like no one was believing her besides her friends. But like, literally, the man that she loves doesn't believe her and is calling her all of these terrible things. So it's just so hard to talk about and to just think about everything that she was feeling leading up to the moment that she took her life. Now, Rodrigo did end up telling Antonia's parents about what had happened and said that he felt really guilty because of how he reacted and how he didn't believe her. Antonia's family was just absolutely shocked and heartbroken by all of this. They had no idea that this terrible thing had happened to their daughter. They reported what happened to the police, and this is when the investigation into Martin began swiftly. Antonia's family was determined to get this man behind bars and make him pay for what he did. The very next day, Alejandro, Antonia's dad, went to the media to spread awareness about what happened to his daughter, and the case was soon in pretty much every news outlet. Thanks to Antonia's father being so vocal about the abuse Martin did to his daughter, it gave 5 other victims the strength to come forward and speak up about their own abuse that they suffered at the hands of Martin. Yeah, this wasn't the first time that Martin had done this. It's just so disgusting, and Antonia's family is just like, wow, if this hadn't happened to Antonia, would any of these other victims ever come forward, and would anybody ever know that Martin was this evil and abusive person? Now, these incidents with these 5 other victims occurred between November of 2010 and September of 2019, with Antonia being his last victim. On December 3rd of 2019, the day Antonia would have been 21 years old, Alejandro formally filed a complaint to the court against Martin for the death of his daughter. With this formal complaint and the 5 other victims speaking up, the prosecution's office had a better chance to prove Martin was responsible for Antonia's death through his repetitive abusive behavior. Now, since Martin's name was now all over the media, it was all over social media, like everyone was talking about this, his family was worried. You know, they were like, whoa, everyone's talking about our son and they're accusing him of doing these terrible things. People are talking bad about us. Like, this is not okay. His family was worried, so they actually filed a protection appeal because their privacy was being violated and their personal information was being leaked to the public, and they were also now getting death threats as a family. So they decided to reach out to Martin's ex, which is again the mother of his 7-year-old daughter, Sam, to see if she could offer them some help, because if you recall, she belonged to a very affluent and powerful family. Sam gets involved, she helps out the family, and in the end, their appeal was approved, and Antonia's family was no longer allowed to make any posts containing the Pradenas family name. On July 21st of 2021, the prosecution's office began their formal investigation into Martin. The next day, on July 22nd, 2021, Martin's preventative prison request was denied and he was only placed in house arrest. Thankfully, Antonia's family attorney filed 2 appeals because they were like, what the heck? Like, he's not even going to go to prison while he waits for his trial. He's just going to get to go home. Like, that's not okay. So the lawyer filed an appeal, and with that, Martin was finally placed in preventative prison. Then on July 14th, 2022, the trial began. During this trial, Martin was found guilty for the 6 victims he R-worded and essayed, including Antonia. So there was 6 victims in total, Antonia and 5 other women. On August 26th, his sentencing was read and he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. However, on December 29th, his sentencing was annulled because of an impartial judge who made some particular comments about the case on his personal social media account, so a new trial was set to be made. Almost 3 years later, which is crazy that it took 3 years for all of this to happen, his second trial finally began, and then on July 7th, 2023, Martin was found guilty and sentenced to 17 years in prison. Now, subtracting the 3 years he already was in preventative prison, he will only serve 14 years. So there was a lot that happened in the trial, and I will include the court documents down below if you guys want to take a look at it for yourself. It's 884 pages long, so it was a lot to go through, and so much happened during this trial. The court document goes over the other victims as well, which could be their own separate video because what happened to them is also absolutely disturbing, but this video would be extremely long, so I will do my best to give you guys kind of like the key pieces that ultimately led to the verdict that relate to Antonia's case. Now, one of the most important pieces of evidence shown was video surveillance from the night Antonia was R-worded. In the video, Martin and Antonia are walking through the parking lot of a grocery store after leaving the nightclub, and you can clearly see how Antonia is struggling to walk straight. She is trying to get away from Martin, she is pushing him away from her, and her body language just seems very defensive. Now, a worker at the grocery store actually saw this entire interaction. She said Martin was grabbing her harshly and that he even forced himself onto Antonia and began to perform oral sex on her. And the grocery store worker is looking at this and he's like, oh my god, this girl is literally pushing him away. So he knocked on the grocery store window to kind of alert Martin like, hey, I'm here looking at this. And that is when Martin just got off of Antonia and then they started to leave. Again, just it's disgusting, it's insane, it's frightening. I just cannot believe that that happened and that the grocery store employee didn't call the police or like grab Antonia to save her from this. It's just, of course, I'm not blaming the worker, but it's just sad that no one intervened.
Yo soy mujer y efectivamente no me gusta lo que se ve. Siento que Antonia no tiene muchas ganas, pero al mismo tiempo tiene ganas porque sí va, pero también tengo claro de que si yo quiero decir no, es no. Es como el logo que se maneja ahora. Y no veo que ella en ningún momento diga que no.
¿Pero para usted es un abuso lo que se produce ahí?
No creo que haya sido un abuso.
So along with that, witness statement, a psychiatric evaluation was also presented as evidence. The result of this exam determined that Martin has no control over his sexual impulses, that he has narcissistic sexual behavior, and psychopathic tendencies. Martin's computer and phone were also presented during the trial, and initially when Martin found out that he was being investigated, he erased 14,000 photos and videos from his computer and then told authorities that his mother destroyed his cell phone in a moment of outburst because his phone was being blown up by messages on social media accusing him of abuse, and his mom was so angry at these messages that she just smashed his phone. So that was a reasoning he gave police as to why he didn't have his cell phone. So at first, there really was nothing for police to analyze, on his phone. However, it was later discovered that his mom never smashed his phone. It turns out that the family sold the phone, but luckily police were able to find it at a flea market. Yeah, like what the heck? Like that's absolutely insane that his family helped sell his phone and hide this evidence. So on his computer, there was an enormous amount of homemade porn, which indicated that Martin did not get permission from these women to record them. And a majority of the women in these videos were unconscious. On his phone, there was also a lot of images and videos of him smoking, as well as more sexual images and videos. This guy, I cannot. It gets even more and more disturbing. Now, Martin insisted on his innocence the entire time during the trial, which just makes everything more infuriating. He even made a YouTube apology video. Yeah, he pulled that out of the bag. He was like, yeah, let me just make an apology video on YouTube. That should clear things up. Now, when asked about the other 5 victims that have come forward, he said that he didn't even remember some of the girls or the situations that they were claiming happened. And the ones that he does remember, he says that those incidents were 100% consensual. He said, quote, my family, the people who love me, believe in what I am saying. My mom, my siblings are my fundamental pillars, next to my parents and siblings, but primarily my daughter. The hardest thing has been being away from her. I tried explaining to her what all of this is. She doesn't know this Martin that the whole world is talking about. End quote. Honestly, it's really sad to think about how his daughter is going to, take all of this in when she gets older. It's really sad. Imagine finding out that your dad did something like this, that not only did he do it once, but he did it 5 other times to 5 different women. It's just really sad. Like, my heart does break for his daughter as well as for his sister. I don't know how his sister was with the situation, if she was defending her brother or if she was like against him. I don't know, but hopefully she was against him because, she's a woman as well. So it's just really, really sad to think about how he had a sister and he had a daughter, yet he did this to someone else's sister and to someone else's daughter. Martin's family has also been heavily criticized by the public. On January 4th of 2024, Martin's father, 56-year-old Ivan Pradenas, was arrested for sexual sexual abuse to a minor. Now, this came to no surprise. According to Antonia's father, Alejandro, Ivan had very inappropriate behavior, which could have contributed to Martin's distorted relationship with sex and just how he views women. During the trial, there were testimonies that said Ivan would take prostitutes to the house to have sex with his wife, and that he would leave the door open for his son to see so that his sons could learn how to be, quote, men. Yeah, that's why I said at the beginning of this video that you guys are going to be angry and that this case makes you question humanity and just people in general, because what the heck? Like, oh my God, it's just crazy. Antonia's father, Alejandro, was doing an interview about this, and he was like, I wonder how the dad, Ivan, felt when he saw that his son was arrested for abusing women, because he did the same thing to a minor. So like, I wonder if he was thinking, oh my God, this is my fault, like I raised him wrong, or if he just didn't care because he was also an abusive person. Like, it's just crazy. So those are just some key moments from the trial. Again, it was very, very long, so it's hard to go over everything in a video. The court document and some video clips of the trial will be linked down below for those who want to dig deeper into this. Now, although Martin will spend time in prison, to the Barra family, it's just not enough of a sentence. They were originally fighting for 41 years during the first trial, and then Martin was only sentenced to 20 years, and then the trial was annulled, so then they redid the trial and he was sentenced to 17 years, which is technically supposed to only be 14 years since he already served 3 years. So the family was just like, this is crazy. Like, this, all these years doing the trial and the retrial were horrible because it was very, re-victimizing and just very traumatic. The family just feels like they didn't really get justice, but there's really nothing else that they can do about it at the moment. The entire Barra family is getting professional help to cope with their loss, but they are still struggling. They just went through so much. They got so many death threats from Martin's defense attorneys and from his family. They even got a death threat from one of the Pradenas family's lawyers, and the lawyer basically said that the family deserved this, that Antonia was a slut, and that the Barra last name was meaningless, powerless, and that they should change it. Again, what is wrong with these people? It just gets even sadder because unfortunately, the Barra family isn't only mourning the loss of Antonia. This year, on February 10th, Antonia's brother, Sebastian, had a fatal car accident. He lost control of the wheel and crashed. Antonia's sisters say that after her death, Sebastian was never the same. The whole family was doing well in therapy and they were doing their best to cope with the loss of Antonia, but Sebastian was the one struggling the most. They said that he just felt very guilty and that he would ask himself, why did this happen to Antonia? Why do bad things happen to good people? There was a time period where he was full of rage after her death because he just couldn't stop thinking about what happened to his sister and how he didn't do a good enough job of stopping his sister from taking her own life. He just had so many questions filling his mind and he just was filled with guilt. Even though, again, this isn't his fault, it's not the family's fault. Like, the only person that caused this was Martin, and in a way, I feel like Rodrigo also was a part of this, and a lot of people do feel like Rodrigo played a big role in what Antonia did, but it's not the family's fault. Now, something that added to his grief is that he would stumble across comments on social media where people would speak horribly about Antonia. People would say that she was a slut, that she was a drunk, and that this was basically her fault, and if she wasn't such a slut and if she wasn't so drunk, then she wouldn't have been R-worded. Sebastian would take screenshots of these comments and send them to his family saying, how can people be so cruel? And it's true, how can people be so cruel to write something like that? That's why it's so important to be careful about what you say, because you never know who's reading it, and you just can't go around saying stuff like that. Like, it's absolutely disgusting. Sebastian also spent a lot of time at Antonia's grave, and he would come back home with his eyes filled with tears. Antonia's family say that they tried helping him as much as they could, and they tried helping him realize that life has to go on, but he just couldn't get to the point of acceptance. He tried to cope by helping other victims of abuse, and he even donated meals to domestic violence victims. He tried the best that he could to heal, but he just couldn't. After his passing, Antonia's family said that they are now both together for eternity, and that makes them feel better to know that they're at least together. It's just really sad that the family had to go through another loss. My heart just absolutely goes out to them. It's just so unfair. Now, the Barra family says that thanks to what happened to Antonia, there is a new law called Ley Antonia, and it sanctions any aggressor who exercised gender violence resulting in a victim taking their own life. Her mom did an interview where she was talking about how Antonia took her life because she felt like there was no way out and that no one was going to believe her. That other women in this situation need to realize that there is help out there and that people will believe you. She added how it's really sad how victims always feel the worst. You know, they're the ones that feel guilty. They're the ones that feel ashamed and scared, but that their assaulter often feels nothing. They don't feel guilt. They don't feel shame. They're not scared. They just go on about their life. And it's just insane how victims feel like they are more to blame than the assaulter. She just honestly wants people to stop victim blaming because it makes it harder for people to come forward since they worry some people will judge them for something that isn't even their fault.
Porque lamentablemente somos la sociedad y muchas veces nuestro propio género, que somos las mujeres, las que juzgamos a la víctima y no juzgan al victimario en realidad. Así es que hemos sido, como dices tú, la bandera de lucha y esperamos que de ahora en adelante con esta sentencia o condena con perspectiva de género, muchas más mujeres se atreven a denunciar y que tengamos la conciencia nosotros como sociedad malamente machista, que las mujeres se atrevan a denunciar y decir lo que les pasó, porque es importante en realidad que no queden impunes sus casos.
And I really don't want to make this about me, but I just want to be honest that this case was a bit triggering for me because I am a victim of SA and I was judged and blamed for what happened by women. Not even the men around me were blaming me for what happened, but the women around me were. I've been debating whether or not to make a video about what happened to me. It's just something that's really hard to talk about, but hearing what Antonia's mom said about how people need to stop victim blaming so that other victims feel safe enough to come forward just really made me think about what happened to me and how by maybe sharing my story, it can help others too. Again, I don't want to make this about me, but I did just kind of want to add that little, statement in there because it is important to, not victim blame, and it is important to show support to other people. Anyways, that can be for another video. It's just really heartbreaking thinking about how Antonia was suffering in silence. Her father said that he should have realized something was wrong because a few days before she took her life, Antonia just wouldn't hug her dad or show any sign of affection like she usually would. And reading that just broke my heart. The family just shouldn't blame themselves for this. They had no idea something was wrong, and I know it's easier said than done, but I just truly hope that they stop blaming themselves for this and that they can heal. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I am going to link a couple of resources down below where you can read about how to cope with SA as the victim and as their family. There's this organization called RAIN, and they have a national sexual assault hotline, so I will have them linked down below. The hotline gives you confidential support from a trained staff member and offers you support through this difficult time. April, again, is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, so it's very important to speak about this very serious topic because this happens more often than we think, and people close to us could be victims of SA and may need help getting through this. I think that's pretty much all I have to say for this video. It was a really difficult one to get through. It makes me very, very angry, and I still don't feel like justice was served, and it's really, really sad that the family has to just deal with this now and try to move on knowing that their daughter didn't get the justice that she deserved. I would love to know your thoughts about this down below, and again, I really appreciate you guys being here and taking the time to listen to what happened to Antonia. She was a beautiful 20-year-old girl that had a full life ahead of her. She had so many hopes and dreams, and she just didn't deserve this. So I hope her family is able to heal from this, and I truly hope that Antonia and her brother Sebastian are resting in peace. Thank you guys again so much for being here, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye everyone.